Hey guys, welcome, and to some of you, welcome back. In today's video, I'll be getting familiar with the F-16I Sufa flight characteristics, taking it through some high-level testing and overall performance. This is the F-16I Sufa. It's an Israeli version of the F-16. Now, this is an add-on mod to the Viper that already exists by Eagle Dynamics. So you actually have to have the Viper in order to use this. By the way, this mod was made by the IDF Mods Project. Now, the main difference between the Viper and the Sufa are, of course, Sufa is a two-seater, but the two main differences are electronics and weapons. But I'm not going to go over that. My focus will be on flight dynamics and performance. Now, since this mod is actually using a Viper as its base, it does have the Viper characteristics. This is the EFM. But the flight dynamics have been tweaked a little bit to add for more weight and a bit more drag, which the Sufa does have. So. Now, as far as this video, I'm going to go over a few things. Takeoff, I'm going to go over that. Some mid-range performance. Basically, this is just a fancy word of saying I just want to tell you what it feels like to fly it when you're normally flying it without doing any crazy stuff. I want to spend more time on slow flight. This is very important. I'm going to spend some time on the rudder, and I'm going to do a landing. Now, after that, we'll go into combat performance and dogfight. And this dogfight is going to be specific. It's going to be under certain conditions. And the reason I'm doing this, I'm going to compare it to the Viper. Now let's go into this performance video. So, first, takeoff. This is almost fully loaded, 50,000 pounds. Sufa, it's maxed out basically. It's a few thousand pounds more than the maximum the Viper can carry. So full power. Rudder is sensitive, especially after a certain speed. You want to do minor touches just to keep it on the center line. And then you got rotate at 170, in this case because it's heavy. And we're going to lift off about 220, 230. And yeah, that's pretty fast. You need to be fast for this takeoff. So, and it's about 20 knots faster than a Viper is at its maximum takeoff weight. So, now takeoff is amazing. It's worthy looking at it from the outside. Let's take a break, look at it from the outside, and then we'll get back to the video. Okay, that was like a 1990s Air Force commercial after they got jealous of what Top Gun did for the Navy. So, next, let's do this mid-level flight performance. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just want to let you know basic controls, what it feels like. It feels like a heavy Viper. Same flight characteristics. I mean, it's the same plane for the most part. So, it just feels a little bit heavier than the Viper. It should be an easy transition. Now let's go into the more important things like slow flight. Slow flight is one of those things that I as a pilot do every time I change to a new plane. I go into a new plane. So whether that's real life or whether that's simulator, it's the same process. I'll go in there, I'll put the landing gear down, I'll put the flaps down, I'll slow it down to just above stall speed. So something we call MCA, minimum controllable airspeed. At this weight, it's about 145 for the Sufa. In a similar case, the Viper airspeed would be about 130 knots at this point, 125, so about 10-15 knots slower. There's a few things that are important. One, we want to keep it at the same altitude, which is 4,000 feet, and we want to keep it at minimum controllable airspeed, about 145 knots, 140 to 145, and we want to do some basic turns. Just get the feel of the plane, just see how wobbly it is, how stable it is, and just get familiar with the plane in this configuration when it's slow. So why do we do this? There's really a couple of reasons. First reason is you want to get familiar with a new plane at near stall speeds. So this is when you're landing, you're going to be about close to these speeds, and you want to know how the airplane handles at these speeds. You can practice that up here, and it will actually help you when you're landing. The second reason this is important is because it actually improves your pilot skills. It improves your coordination. Because at these slow speeds, you got to manage pitch, roll, rudder, and power, and an airplane that's barely flying. So it takes practice, and it actually makes you a better pilot, gives you better coordination skills. Next thing, let's talk about a rudder. This is something very important to me. This is something very important in dogfights, and this is something I actually have questions about in the F-16, because both the Viper and Sufas just seem to be a little bit, at least to me, underperforming when it comes to the rudder. The rudder is not as effective as it is on the other planes. I'll leave this question to actual Viper pilots. Is the F-16 rudder not as effective as the rudder is on other airplanes? Because the F-16, you can just see, barely makes that roll. This actually affects you in dogfights. It's one of the reasons I don't like to do rolling scissors in the F-16. So rudder is not as effective, hence you don't want to use it, because the other guy is going to get on your tail pretty quick. And the last thing over here is the landing. Landing is very much like a heavy F-16. The approach speeds, a lot of guys talk about approach speeds. Basically in new planes, what you want to look at, forget the approach speed and look at your bracket or angle of attack. In this case you have two. You have the bracket on the hood, and you want to keep the point inside that bracket. At the same time, if you look just off to the left side of the hood, you have an angle of attack indicator, and you want to keep it on the donut. But having said all that, the approach speed on the Sufa is about 10-15 knots higher than it is on the Viper. So again, a heavier plane, you need more speed. This is just basic testing. Now let's go into performance testing. To do the performance testing, I'm actually going to do dogfights, because I know the Viper, I know its limits, I know how it dogfights. If I do the same dogfights, I can directly compare Sufa to the Viper, and that will give me a good idea of the Sufa performance in these extreme conditions. Okay, so now let's get into the second part of this testing, which is going to be a dogfight performance testing. Basically, 2-circle, 1-circle fight. There's going to be two parts to this. First is going to be a 2-circle. I want to see how it performs. I want to see how it performs against a known entity, and in this case, that's going to be the Typhoon. The Typhoon's AI set ace level. I know against the Viper I did everything I could and just managed to stay even with it. With the Sufa, I don't expect it to be that way. But let's see. Now, one thing to remember here: this is not about winning. I don't care about winning. I just want to see how good the F-16 is, and I'm comparing it to a known entity. Okay, so in this case, after the merge, I'm just going to keep it about 400 to 450 knots. I'm going to try to, and see where we go. Of course, the Typhoon did a 1-circle, and now he's actually getting on my tail, which is pretty fast. But then again, the Typhoon is an amazing, at least in DCS, this mod is very, very maneuverable. And of course, you can immediately see that the Sufa is not performing as well as the Viper. The Typhoon could not get on my tail. Again, I just managed to stay even with him in the Viper. But here, because of the extra weight and a little bit of extra drag, the Sufa is not performing quite to the Viper standards, which is as it should. The second part of this, if you're keeping attention, is that the Typhoon is not getting a shooting solution. Now, if this was a human, they could overpull a little bit and shoot me in a second. That's not the point. Now, one thing about the AIs is they will not fire unless they have a firing solution. In this case, the Typhoon, even though he's staying with me, he's not able to get a firing solution, because the Sufa performance is actually very good. It's not up to the Viper standards, but it's managing to stay just out of the firing solution. Okay, eventually he will get a shot, but he'll miss here. Yep, but that's fine. So once we reach the ground, hey, I made it down to the ground. He breaks off, and then we can actually do a different kind of dogfight. But I'm not gonna finish this dogfight. I will put it on in the end if you guys want to see it, but because who wins this is not important. The point of this specific test was to actually see how the Sufa performed in a 2-circle fight, and it was exactly as expected. So the IDF project team managed to get its sustained turn performance pretty accurate. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing against the Typhoon in a one circle fight. Again, this is AI. There's a reason for it. There's certain behaviors I expect from the Typhoon AI, and what I'm doing is I'm testing against those behaviors. So let's go over here, 480 knots. Let's do a hard pull, hard as we can. Full stick back and keep it there. With a Viper, we actually managed to kill him here. They're very aggressive. Just missed him with a Sufa. Okay, let's go back into a one circle fight, get the nose up, try to keep above 190 knots here as we do a one circle. Okay, here we go. Let's reverse it back into a one circle fight here. Just a tiny bit too slow. That's okay because our nose was up. He's kind of far. We're going to try to get a shot here. It's a long shot, but okay, missed him. That's fine. Let's go right back into that one circle. Keep it back into that one circle. 215 knots. That's good. That's actually good airspeed. Try to keep that nose above the horizon and stay in that turn. About 190 knots. Perfect. That's exactly what we're looking. And there he comes. Okay, let's reverse back into a one circle. Let's find him up on the other side. Okay, there it is. Let's line him up. Okay, we shot him here. Okay, that's good. He's not done. Let's keep going back into that one circle. There we go, 220 knots. Good. Should keep it up to 190 or above 190, just as in the Viper. Okay, back in one circle. Alright, there he comes right out of the sun. Reverse it. 185 knots. Perfect. Let's line him up. Okay, and there goes the wing. Perfect. Almost exactly as it was in the Viper. The difference was that first turn. Yes, there was. And that first turn actually had to do with the weight. The airplane was a little bit heavier, so it just didn't quite make it to where the Viper did in that first initial turn. But after that first turn, the rest of them were just fine. So again, the instantaneous turn, basically what's used for these one circle fights, is not as affected as it is as the sustained turn, which is also affected by the drag. So other than that, Sufa performs exactly as it should in a one circle fight. The IDF Mods Project team, I think they tweaked this to the right levels. It's perfect. I love it, and I hope to keep flying it. So if you guys want to see the ending of the other video, you know where we left it off. We left it off just in a two circle fight. Typhoon had just fired, but disengaged just as we reached the deck. We went up, and at that point I started fighting differently. I didn't do a two circle fight anymore. I went back into a one circle fight, which you just saw just a minute ago. You saw how effective that one circle fight was, even against something like a Typhoon. So go ahead, watch the rest of this video, enjoy it. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you guys soon.
Altitude. Pull up.